My name is Susan Robinette, 31 years old. At 8:14 a.m., my phone lit up with a message from my mother like a company memo. Neat punctuation, zero warmth. We changed all the locks and the gate code. We no longer trust you. It landed with the cold efficiency of a termination notice, except the position being cut was daughter. I stared at the notification in the blue morning light, the kind that makes everything feel strangely clinical. A part of me wasn't surprised. Love hadn't lived in our house for a long time, only obligations, invoices disguised as requests, and a running tab that always found its way back to me. My thumbs hovered, and I typed what felt like the first decision I'd made in years. Noted. Very clever. But you forgot one thing. I didn't wait for a reply. I opened my banking app, scrolled to the scheduled payments, and killed the automatic transfer. $4,800 on the 15th of every month. Money I'd been sending for a house I didn't live in and apparently wasn't welcome to enter anymore. The confirmation popped up. Canceled. A word so small for something so heavy. The silence afterward was strange, not peaceful, just empty, like the air after a storm siren shuts off. I set the phone down and listened to the apartment breathe. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, someone's dog barked at nothing. I made coffee and tried to memorize the sound of it dripping. Stupid, I know. But that's what I wanted to remember about my life, not the sound of group chats, not the ringtone I'd trained myself to answer on the first vibration. You can't tell this story without saying the part that makes everyone uncomfortable. I enabled it. For 4 years, I paid their mortgage like a sacred tithe no one thanked me for. I covered the roof repair when the storm tore shingles clean off like peeling a bandage from old skin. I kept the internet on so my dad could stream sports and my sister's kids could watch cartoons. When the property tax reminder made my mother dizzy, I paid that too. Every time I told myself it was temporary. Every time temporary stretched. The first crack? A Facebook post. I was waiting curbside for a grocery pickup when the algorithm served it to me like a dare. A photo of my parents and my older sister Lindsay standing on the front steps of the house, that house, beaming. The caption read, "So proud of our daughter for building a future we can all share. This home is in the right hands." A wooden sign dangled from my mother's hand, "Home Sweet Home, a gift from Lindsay." I reread the caption twice, then a third time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into a version that included me. No tag, no, "We're grateful for Susan's help." Just hearts, clapping emojis, and half our extended family praising Lindsay's strength and generosity. Somewhere in the grocery bay, a cart squeaked. People walked by. I sat perfectly still, pinned to that image like a butterfly on cork. The second crack came via a customer service voice too cheerful for what she was saying. I'd called the bank just to confirm the mortgage details, something logical to counter the surreal. "Yes, Ms. Robinette," the woman chirped. "Primary contact is still you, but it looks like there was a request last week to modify that to a Ms. Lindsay Carson. Verification wasn't completed, but the documents are in progress." Documents in progress for what had always been marketed to me as family help. The third crack arrived as a quiet theft. I checked my checking account and saw it immediately. $2,400 gone. A transfer to a card I recognized from 2 years ago, Lindsay's emergency visa that I had agreed to bail out just this once. I texted her. Me, "Did you use my card again?" Lindsay, "Don't make it a thing, Susan. Kids needed shoes. We're still sharing that one, right?" Me, "No, we weren't." She didn't respond. My mother did. "Mom, honey, Lindsay is going through so much. She said she'll pay you back. Let's not start a war over a few dollars." A few dollars. It was never the money, not really. It was the math of worth. When Lindsay needed something, it was a crisis. When I did, it was inconvenient. Humiliation thrives in crowds. The group chat had been renamed Family Circle sometime in the night, the kind of soft branding that turns cruelty into community. Someone posted a meme of a man handing over his wallet. Big sponsor energy. A cousin tagged me. Another chimed in. "Yo, can you cover my loans too?" My father added, "Only if you name your next cat after the bank. Got to keep the donor happy." I left the chat. They added me back with balloons. I left again. That time, I blocked them all. It felt petty and juvenile, like slamming a door in a hallway of open rooms. But sometimes pettiness is a dress rehearsal for a boundary. A week later, while mowing the backyard, the same yard I'd kept tidy for summers because no point hiring someone when you're already here, I turned off the engine to grab water and heard voices through the open kitchen window. My mother's, low and almost giddy. Lindsay's, bright with the confidence of someone speaking in a house she believes is hers. Did you see her face when Aunt Karen asked about the deed? Lindsay laughed. She looked like, I don't know, a guest waiting to be served. My mother's giggle was a sound I didn't recognize. It's nearly done. Once the paperwork clears, what can she say? She insisted on putting the mortgage in her name, her problem. Then Lindsay, honestly, it's better this way. She's always been distant, a guest with a wallet. And finally my mother, the sentence that would live in my chest like a shard. She's not family anymore. She's a sponsor. It didn't ignite me. If anything, it put the fire out. I stood there with the hose sweating condensation onto my hand and felt everything inside me cool into something hard and precise. Their words, not mine. Their definition, not mine. The lock clicked, not on our front door, but on any illusion I still had about who I was to them. So when the message arrived this morning, the locks, the gate code, the pronouncement of distrust, it didn't have the power to break me. It just confirmed a boundary they thought they were setting, but I had already drawn. That's the thing about being someone's sponsor. Sponsors can cancel. I put my coffee on the windowsill and looked around my apartment like a forensic tech, inventorying the life I had paid for that actually belonged to me. The scuffed wooden table I'd refinished on a Saturday afternoon, the plant I kept alive against type, the thrifted lamp that made evening feel like a theater scene. I wondered how long it would take for them to notice the $4,800 wasn't coming. I wondered whether Lindsay would try to float it, whether my father would call in a favor, whether my mother would press her hand to her temple and whisper about betrayal. The phone vibrated. A new message. This time an email. The subject line, all caps, clean font, a name I didn't know. We have a problem. Call immediately. A law office, of course. There's a genre of people who only learn love as leverage. They outsource tenderness to attorneys and call it protection. I didn't call, not because I was afraid, but because I had finally learned the difference between reacting and choosing. People think the climax of a story is the moment you confront your enemies in public, microphone in hand and receipts in a folder. They're wrong. The real climax is quiet. It happens at your kitchen counter with a phone in your palm when you choose to stop performing the role they cast you in. I wasn't the donor anymore. I wasn't the daughter for rent. I was a woman making her first uncomplicated decision in years. I closed my laptop and picked up the printed ledger I'd been keeping. Habit, not strategy. The neat columns of dates and amounts and notes in the margins. Shingles, insurance, water heater, property tax, childcare bridge money, internet, emergency groceries that somehow repeated every month. I ran a finger down the totals. Numbers don't lie. People do, to others and to themselves, but numbers hold steady like handrails. When my phone lit again, I let it buzz out on the counter. I poured another cup of coffee and stepped onto the balcony. The morning had warmed, a thin veil of humidity softening the air. Across the street, a father hoisted his toddler into a car seat while their dog pawed at the back bumper. They were laughing at something too small for me to hear. Ordinary love, unbranded. No invoices, no gate codes. I thought of my grandfather, how he'd once told me that families are machines built on stories. If the story is you're the responsible one, he'd said, they'll run you until the engine smokes. I had laughed then, brushed it off as generational cynicism. Now his words felt like instruction. The email sat unopened. I knew I would read it eventually. I also knew the next chapter wasn't going to start with a reply all or a return to the family circle chat. It would start somewhere else, somewhere with a projector, a clean ledger, and my voice unshaking. But that was later. Today was for the simplest, most radical act I had left, doing nothing for them. They changed the locks. It was the first thing they'd done for me in years. It made leaving easier. I took a breath and let it out slow, the way my therapist had taught me back when I still apologized for even taking up the appointment slot. My phone buzzed again. Attorney, mom, dad. Lindsay, typing, stopped. I turned the screen face down and watched a streak of sunlight slide across the kitchen floor like a curtain opening. End scene. On to the next. I used to think home was a place you built with love and loyalty. Now I know it can also be built from quiet transactions and the kind of guilt that arrives every month in the form of a bank statement. The first time I paid my parents' mortgage, I told myself it was temporary. Just until Dad gets back on his feet, Mom had said, voice trembling with practice worry. That was 4 years ago. I was 27, newly promoted at the firm, still naive enough to believe that success meant I could finally fix everything that had been broken growing up. Every time I sent money, Mom would say, "You're such a blessing, Susan. You're keeping the family afloat." Those words used to warm me. Now they just sound like a slogan. The total grew quietly. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, roof repairs, even a new water heater. I was basically their invisible landlord with no ownership. And then there was Lindsay, my older sister, the professional victim. Lindsay had 2 kids and a talent for turning every inconvenience into an emergency. "Daycare's too expensive, Suze. Can you help for a month?" "My card got hacked. Can you cover the balance?" "My car's brakes are bad. It's not safe for the kids." Every time I said yes, because what kind of sister says no to children's safety? My boyfriend at the time, Daniel, used to joke that I was running a family welfare program. "You're not their daughter, babe. You're their financial aid office." I laughed it off then. I thought he just didn't understand how family works. Now I know he understood it better than I did. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything started unraveling. I was scrolling through Facebook, mindlessly liking travel photos when I saw it, a picture that shouldn't have existed. There was my sister Lindsay, my parents, and her 2 kids, all standing proudly in front of the house I'd been paying for. Behind them, a shiny new Home Sweet Home sign. The caption from my mother read, "So proud of our daughter Lindsay for building a home we can all share. The house is finally in the right hands." The right hands. I must have reread those words a dozen times, waiting for the universe to correct the typo that left me out of the story. But it didn't. The comments rolled in like confetti at someone else's parade. "She deserves it. Strong women build homes with heart. You're lucky to have such a giving daughter." Each compliment was a hammer strike on the same nail. Even Aunt Karen wrote, "Lindsay, you've always been the responsible one." Responsible one. I actually laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds almost like choking. I didn't comment. I didn't even like the post. I just stared at the smiling faces, my family, posing in front of the house I paid for, the porch light I replaced, the lawn I mowed, the future I apparently wasn't part of. By Monday, I was done pretending. I called the bank to check the mortgage details. Some logical part of me needed to hear confirmation that this madness couldn't possibly be legal. "Yes, Ms. Robinette," the banker said cheerfully. "Your name is still the only one on the mortgage. But there was a request last week to change the primary contact to a Ms. Lindsay Carson. The documents are still pending verification." The pen slipped from my hand. "Who made that request?" "Looks like it was uploaded through an online form," she replied. "Probably someone with access to your account details." Someone with access. The words tasted like metal. I ended the call without another word, my pulse steady but my thoughts spinning. That night, I pulled up my bank statements. And there it was. An unauthorized $2,400 transfer. The account name glared back at me. L. Carson Emergency Visa. I texted her immediately. Me. "Did you use my card again?" Lindsay. "Don't make it a big deal, Suze. The kids needed shoes. Thought we were still sharing that one." Me. "No, we weren't." 10 minutes later, another message popped up, but not from her. "Mom, honey, Lindsay said she'll pay you back. Don't start a war over a few dollars." A few dollars. I stared at the screen until the text blurred. That was my mother's reflex, to minimize, dismiss, and move on. When I was 10, I came home crying because a teacher mocked my thrift store shoes. Mom said, "Don't be dramatic." When I was 16 and asked if we could stop lending money to Uncle Derek, she said, "Don't be selfish." And now, decades later, it was the same lesson in a new format. Don't make it a thing. But it was a thing. It always had been. Later that week, they changed the name of our family group chat to Family Circle. I hadn't even opened it in months, but the notification pulled me in like a bad habit. Inside, someone had posted a meme, a man handing over his wallet with the caption, "Big sponsor energy." A cousin tagged me. "That's so you, Susan." Another replied, "Can we get you to fund my student loans next?" Even my dad joined in. Only if you name your next kid after her, keep the donor happy. No one said it was cruel. No one defended me. Not even a half-hearted emoji. I left the chat. They added me back. I left again. Then I blocked them all. It should have hurt. Instead, it felt clean. Still, the silence was loud. I started noticing the details I used to overlook. The way my mother's voice hardened when she mentioned me to relatives. The way my father avoided eye contact when I visited. How Lindsay's kids called me Aunt Susan like I was a distant cousin, not family. One Friday afternoon, I went to mow the backyard. The same yard I'd maintained for 3 summers because Dad insisted, no point hiring someone when you're already here. The air was thick with cut grass and resentment. When the mower sputtered, I stopped for water, and that's when I heard them, Mom and Lindsay, talking through the open kitchen window. Lindsay: "Did you see her face when Aunt Karen said the house looks amazing? She just stood there smiling like some polite guest." Mom chuckled, low and satisfied. "It's almost done. Once the title transfer clears, there's nothing she can say. She's the one who put her name on the mortgage. Her problem now." Lindsay's laugh sharpened. "It's better this way. She's always been distant, a guest with a wallet." And then Mom's voice, calm and final. "She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor." The water bottle slipped from my hand and hit the grass with a dull thud. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood there, breathing through the ache like a diver learning to stay under longer. That night, I sat in my car for a full hour outside my apartment, headlights off, replaying their words. Every time I thought the anger would rise, it didn't. What replaced it was colder, clarity. They'd defined me in a language I finally understood, transactional. So I decided to speak that same language. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop, scrolled through 4 years of transfers, and started typing line by line. Mortgage, property insurance, utilities, repairs, groceries, roof replacement, daycare bridge, internet, every cent that had ever left my account for theirs. By midnight, the total glared back at me, $211,723. And for the first time in years, the number didn't scare me. It steadied me. 3 days later, a white envelope slid under my apartment door. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Inside was a glossy invitation trimmed in gold. "Please join us in celebrating Elizabeth Carson's 60th birthday." I stared at it for a long moment, the script glittering in the light. Underneath the date, a quote was embossed in cursive: "A house is not a home without family." I almost laughed. I pinned the invitation to my fridge, right above the spreadsheet printout. A reminder that every story has a climax, and mine was coming soon. The week leading up to my mother's birthday party was the quietest my life had ever been. No messages, no fake apologies, just a heavy, electric silence that felt almost ceremonial, like everyone was waiting for me to make the next move. But I already had. Each night after work, I sat at my kitchen table with that spreadsheet, cross-checking every figure. Mortgage payments, property taxes, repairs, even the $380 I'd Venmo'd Lindsay for kids' Halloween costumes that year. She'd said she was broke. Every number told the same story. I had kept them afloat while they built a fantasy where I didn't exist. By Friday, I had printed everything, neat, labeled, indexed. Then I went one step further. I backed up every text message, every bank receipt, every audio file, including one I'd accidentally captured through my phone when I'd overheard them at the kitchen window weeks ago. When I replayed that clip, I felt the same chill. Mom's voice saying, "She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor." It still made me go still inside, not in pain anymore, just in certainty. I sent a short text to my grandfather, William Robinette, that night. "Grandpa, I'm going to Mom's birthday on Saturday. I think it's time things are said out loud." He didn't reply. He never did when emotions were involved. But I knew he read it. He was the one person in the family who never asked for a dime and never treated me like a walking ATM. He'd once told me, "People who depend on your silence will always test how deep it runs." He was right. The morning of the party, I woke early. Steam curled from my mug of black coffee as I stared at the invitation still pinned to the fridge. A house is not a home without family. What a cruel little slogan, I thought. I slipped the printed spreadsheet and a small USB drive into my bag, zipped it shut, and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I didn't look angry. I looked composed, controlled. It was the calm before a storm only I knew was coming. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. The venue was exactly what I expected. A rented hall decorated in emerald green and gold, a banner strung across the back wall reading, "Happy 60th Elizabeth." Champagne glasses clinked. Polite laughter filled the air like static. When I entered, the chatter softened. A few people smiled hesitantly, unsure if I was supposed to be there. Lindsay's eyes widened briefly, then she looked away as if I were a ghost, walking through a room she no longer believed in. I didn't greet anyone. I just found an empty seat near the back and waited. The slideshow began. Childhood photos, vacations, weddings, all narrated by the same sugary voice. My mother's. When an image of the house appeared on the projector, people clapped. "Built with love," she said, and passed down with purpose. Then Lindsay took the mic. Her voice was warm, steady, the way it always was when she was performing. "This home," she said, "represents sacrifice, strength, and what it means to be a family. We've worked so hard to keep it." Worked! The word almost made me laugh. Applause filled the room. My mother stood, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. "I'm proud of my daughter," she said. "She's shown us what legacy really means, and I'm so grateful this home will stay in the right hands." I could feel my pulse in my palms. The right hands. Again. I rose from my chair slowly. At first, I didn't plan to speak, but there's a moment where silence stops feeling like grace and starts feeling like consent. I walked to the mic. The room shifted. Forks clinked against plates. Whispers rippled through the tables. "I wasn't planning to say anything tonight," I began, my voice even, calm. "But since we're talking about legacy, let's talk about what it costs." I reached into my bag and pulled out the USB drive. "Could someone help me plug this in?" I asked sweetly. My cousin obliged, confused but curious. The first audio file played. It was faint at first, the low hum of background noise. Then my mother's voice filled the speakers. She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor. A few people gasped. Someone dropped a glass. I didn't look at my mother. I just clicked to the next file. A screenshot of the family chat, projected 10 feet tall. The meme of the man handing over his wallet. The comments. Big sponsor energy. The laughter. My father's joke. And then the final slide. The spreadsheet. Line after line of payments, the total highlighted in red, 211,723,84. "This," I said quietly, "is the cost of your legacy. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every so-called emergency. 4 years of paying for a house you claimed as yours." The room was dead silent except for the faint hum of the projector. "If the house belongs to Lindsay now," I continued, "then this isn't a gift, it's a transaction. And here's the bill." Lindsay shot up from her chair, her face flushed. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious." My father stood. "You don't come here and embarrass your mother on her birthday." I turned to him, calm as glass. "You want to talk about embarrassment, Dad? How about the loan application you filled out using my name and credit score without telling me? Because I've got that paperwork too." He froze, sat back down. My mother's voice cracked. "It was a gift, Susan. Families help each other." I stepped closer, eyes steady on hers. "No, Mom. Families thank each other. Families respect each other. Gifts come with gratitude, not deceit." The air grew thick, the kind of silence that eats sound. And that's when the final surprise arrived. The doors opened and my grandfather walked in, slow, deliberate, leaning on his cane. The crowd parted instinctively as he made his way to the front. He took the microphone from my hand without a word. He turned to my mother first. "You raised a thief," he said quietly, then to my father, "and a coward." No one dared speak. Finally, he looked at me. "Susan, I read your message. You were right to stand up for yourself." He paused, then added, "Last week, I changed the trust. Lindsay's name is gone. The property, the accounts, they're yours now." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Lindsay's jaw dropped. My mother's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Grandpa turned back to them. "You wanted legacy? Then earn it." He handed the mic back to me and walked out. I stood there, heartbeat steady, then placed my stack of invoices on the gift table beside the wrapped presents. "You changed the locks," I said softly, "but I already changed my future." And then I left. No cake, no toasts, no apologies. Just the sound of chairs scraping and 100 eyes watching the one person they'd finally underestimated. That night, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, angry texts, voicemails. I didn't answer any of them. The only one I saved was my grandfather's message. Proud of you, kid. You did what needed to be done. I played it once before bed, then I deleted everything else. For the first time in my life, I slept without guilt. Morning sunlight cut through the blinds, sharp and clean. My phone was already vibrating with new messages before I even opened my eyes. I knew who it was before looking. Mom, you humiliated me in front of everyone. Do you feel proud? Dad, you're ungrateful. You won't see a cent from us ever again. Lindsay, I can't believe you did that. You ruined Mom's night. 3 notifications later, a different tone, an unknown number, subject line, private and confidential, settlement proposal. They moved fast, I'll give them that. I poured myself coffee and read the email slowly. It was from a law office offering to resolve the misunderstanding amicably. They wanted to discuss repayment options and non-disclosure terms. Translation, hush money. I smiled. There's a peculiar peace in seeing manipulators panic. It's the first time they're forced to speak your language. I replied with one line. Full repayment within 72 hours or I go public. Then I closed the laptop and went for a walk. The air outside was cool and strangely fresh, like the city itself didn't care about the chaos unfolding in my inbox. I walked past a small park where a mother was helping her toddler climb the slide. The child stumbled, laughed, tried again. Something about that small, ordinary persistence softened me for a moment. I thought about my own childhood, how every mistake I made was treated like a moral flaw, how every success was labeled luck or duty. No wonder I grew up thinking love had to be earned through sacrifice. At 21, I had taken my first real job out of college and immediately started helping with temporary family debts. By 25, I was paying half their bills. By 28, I was fully funding their lifestyle. The math never scared me. The silence did. The way they never once said thank you. That's what hurt them most. Not the money. The absence of acknowledgement. On the second day, I got a call from my father. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Are you happy now? He snapped, voice low and furious. Your mother's been crying nonstop. Maybe she should have thought about that before calling me a sponsor. You think this is about money? You embarrassed your family. I laughed softly. You embarrassed yourselves. I just turned on the microphone. There was a long silence. Then he said something that made my chest tighten, not from guilt, but recognition. You were always different, always cold. Never knew how to be part of this family. That's because I was busy keeping it from collapsing, I said quietly. And for what? So you could write me out of every story? He hung up. No goodbye. Just a deadline. That night, my grandfather called. His voice was calm, almost amused. They're fuming, he said. Good. I didn't want it to get this messy, I admitted. He chuckled. Truth always looks messy when it finally steps into the light. Don't flinch, Susan. You earned your peace. He paused, then added, Do you know what your grandmother used to say? Silence is a form of consent. You just stopped consenting. That line stayed with me long after the call ended. The third day came, 72 hours. At 10:17 a.m., my phone chimed with a new notification. Incoming wire transfer, $211,723.84. No sender name, just a private account. Full repayment. They didn't call. They didn't apologize, and that was perfect. Because I didn't want closure from their mouths. I wanted it in writing, in digits, in proof. I sent one final email back to their lawyer. Transaction received. No further contact necessary. Then I deleted the thread. For the first time in years, I spent a weekend doing absolutely nothing for anyone else. No errands, no budgeting, no calls. I cleaned my apartment, rearranged the bookshelves, bought a cheap bouquet of daisies from the market. I even lit a candle, just because I could. The scent was called Ocean Calm, which felt ironic considering the storm I'd just walked through. Late that night, I opened my journal and wrote something I hadn't dared to before. Peace isn't given, it's reclaimed. 2 days later, I decided to post about it. Not the private details, just the truth dressed in simplicity. I uploaded a photo of my now empty family circle chat, captioned, Closure isn't always forgiveness. Sometimes it's $211,723.84, the price of silence, obedience, and funding someone else's fantasy. I didn't expect it to go viral, but it did. Thousands of comments flooded in within hours. People thanking me, confessing their own family betrayals. Therapists sharing the post with messages about financial abuse. Somewhere among them, I saw a comment that made me smile. She didn't lose her family. She lost her debt collectors. Exactly. That night, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail. My father's voice. So that's it? You think money fixes this? You think you won? He was shouting, breathing heavy. You're not part of this family anymore. I deleted it mid-sentence. He didn't realize he was giving me the very gift I'd been waiting for: freedom. The next morning, I woke up to silence. Not the heavy kind, the peaceful kind. I made coffee, opened the balcony door, and let the sunlight spill across the floor. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for their messages or rehearsing polite replies. I wasn't anyone's provider, mediator, or financial safety net. I was just Susan, a woman with her own bills, her own peace, and her own name. They had spent years treating me like a service, something to call when they needed fixing. And when I stopped giving, they stopped caring. But that's the thing about services. When they end, life doesn't collapse. It just gets quiet. I took a sip of coffee, glanced at my phone, no notifications, and smiled. I didn't feel lighter. I felt clearer. And clarity, I realized, is just another word for freedom. It's strange how peace sounds at first. It isn't music or silence. It's the absence of expectation. The week after the transfer, the noise finally stopped. No calls, no drama, no fake concern. Just quiet. The kind that feels like standing in an empty house after everyone has moved out. Walls still echoing with old arguments. At first, I thought I'd miss them. But what I actually missed was the illusion. The belief that one day, if I gave enough, they'd love me right. I didn't post anything more online. The story had already taken a life of its own. Comment sections overflowed with people saying, "You did the right thing." Therapists used my post as a case study for financial boundaries. Strangers called me brave, some called me cold. The truth was neither. I wasn't brave or cold. I was done. A week later, I went to see my grandfather. His house was quiet as always, the kind of quiet that holds wisdom instead of emptiness. He was sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, eyes fixed on the horizon like he was expecting me. "Took you long enough," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. "I didn't know if you wanted company." "Wanted, maybe not, but I knew you'd come." I sat beside him. The late afternoon light turned the edges of everything gold. For a moment, we didn't speak. Finally, he said, "Your father came here yesterday." I froze. "Let me guess, he wasn't happy about the trust?" Grandpa chuckled. "Unhappy people rarely are. He asked me to reconsider. I told him legacy isn't an inheritance, it's behavior repeated." I stared at my hands. I didn't mean to make a scene. He looked at me, eyes soft but steady. "You didn't make a scene, Susan. You told the truth. People who live on lies always think truth is drama." I nodded, letting that settle. Then, after a moment, I asked, "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" He took a sip of tea before answering. "Forgiveness requires accountability. They haven't earned it." We sat in silence after that. The sun dipped lower, the cicadas started their evening song, and I realized that this stillness, was what love could feel like when it wasn't conditional. The following days were ordinary in the best way. I worked, I slept, I cooked for myself without guilt. I even started a new routine. Morning runs, no phone, no noise. Each morning, the world looked less like a battlefield and more like a beginning. People think healing is fireworks. It's not. It's grocery lists and quiet dinners, and no longer checking your phone every 10 minutes for an apology that will never come. One afternoon, I received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. The old house. The home sweet home sign was gone. The yard was overgrown, the windows dusty. On the back, someone had written in slanted handwriting I recognized immediately. "We miss you. Please come home." No signature, but I didn't need one. It was my mother's handwriting. For a second, I felt something tug at me. Nostalgia, maybe, or habit. But I folded the photo neatly and placed it in my desk drawer without replying. Because home isn't walls and locks and codes. It's safety. And there was nothing safe about that place anymore. A month later, my life looked unfamiliar in the best way. I'd moved to a smaller apartment closer to my office. Started therapy again, this time not to cope, but to rebuild. Even Daniel, my ex, had reached out after seeing the story online. "I always knew you'd draw the line one day," he said. "Just didn't think it'd go that viral." I laughed. I didn't either. I just wanted them to stop pretending I owed them my existence. He smiled. "Looks like you finally stopped being their safety net." "Yeah," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "Now I'm my own." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't meant to be. Just a quiet acknowledgement that some endings don't need a sequel. One evening, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights shimmer like distant fires. Below, people were laughing, crossing streets, living. I thought about how long I'd measured my worth in invoices and sacrifices, how I used to mistake compliance for love. But the truth? Love without respect is just dependency dressed in sentiment, and family without boundaries is just chaos in matching sweaters. The final message I received from my father came weeks later. It wasn't angry this time, just bitter. You think money makes you right? You'll regret this someday when you're alone. I read it once, then deleted it. Because I wasn't alone, I had peace. And peace doesn't demand explanations. These days, when people ask why I'm not close with my family, I keep it simple. I stopped mistaking access for love. Some nod with understanding, others don't. But it doesn't matter anymore. I don't wait for calls that never come. I don't check for their names in my inbox. I don't need to prove I'm a good daughter by being a willing victim. They changed the locks. I changed my life. Freedom didn't come cheap. It cost exactly 223 years and 84 hours. But it bought me something priceless. Silence that doesn't ache, mornings without guilt, and a future that finally feels like mine. If they were in front of me today, I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't cry. I'd just smile and say nothing. Because silence, when it's chosen, is final. I don't forgive them yet. Maybe I never will. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't a door you open for them. It's one you open for yourself when you're ready to walk through alone. And I'm already halfway across the threshold.